2021. And first up is approval of the minutes of July 27th, 2021. If I could have a motion and a second, and then we'll discuss.
Move to approve.
Okay, Councilmember Lamb moves, Councilmember Baxter seconds. Are there questions or comments? I have a curiosity question. Since I missed the meeting.
Okay.
On page 4, Councilmember Lamb asked what percentage funded the police and fire pension retirement fund is, and Ms. Combs responded. What did you say? Do you remember what percentage it's funded?
It was in the 70s.
In the 70s?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
It's not 85% funded.
Okay, so in the 70s?
Yes.
Okay, very good. It's somewhat hard to figure out what the answers are to the questions. So if board members want to know details of what so-and-so responded, good morning.
Sorry.
No worries. Where would they find those? Do you know what I'm asking?
I am, yes.
In the minutes, so I was absent, so when I read the minutes and someone responded, I didn't know what their response was. So where are the full minutes?
I think you can watch it on YouTube.
So it would be
the minutes, or the actual meetings.
The video.
to get the real answers?
Yes.
Okay.
I need to watch it like you do with the police and fire, because I know with our minutes, they're abbreviated.
Yes.
But you can watch the full meeting, and I believe I found them all on YouTube.
Okay, that helps. So if members are absent, if they want the answers to the questions,
Yeah,
they
if they
just
wanna
need to go
full
watch the meeting.
And watch the conversations that had, transpired, then that would be my suggestion, is to watch the full meeting on YouTube.
Okay. Was this, I'm trying to figure out, is this a decision just because it's easier to not put a full response in, or what is, Susan's dying to say something.
No, I'm not dying to say anything, but I will definitely, it is a choice of the staff as to how we report it.
Okay.
And I know that I'm not trying to speak for you, but I think that instead of interpreting what someone is saying in some situations, that it's, when you just explain that who responded and everything as opposed to the interpretation. And I don't know if that is the reason that you all are choosing to do the minutes. I mean, the minutes can strictly just be,
yes.
Be motions only as well, so, I mean,
Yes.
you all put a little bit more in there than you would have to, so.
Okay, that helps.
Yeah.
And I totally understand that.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we do is usually, our format is, we do like to point out that someone did respond, someone spoke, but we don't want to interpret. And additionally, consistency, because if we were
Okay.
to do it in one scenario, then, so we explained that someone responded here, but we didn't do it there.
Okay, so for example, on the question I had asked, that's just a fact.
Yes.
70-some%, so the choice is not to do any, so that it's all the same. Is that?
Right, we
Kind
try
of
to
understand.
be consistent, yes.
Okay. I'm fine with that. I just wondered about the history of that.
The other
Because
thing.
that's the,
I mean, we're happy to do it however you would like.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing is that used to be that we never had these videoed.
yes.
And so we didn't have that type of record.
Okay,
So therefore, back in the day, we used to have more input in it, but now that they're on a video, then there's an
Yeah.
opportunity for you
go
to
watch
actually
it.
go and watch it.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
total sense.
So
I'm
that's
fine
another
with
thing.
that. I thought I'd just ask about the percentage since you're in the room. Okay. I didn't see any other comments or questions. So all those in favor of approving those minutes, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, thank you. That motion passes. And let's see, who's presenting the first quarter expenses? Is that,
It's just for information only.
okay, so no presentation, so we'll go right on. All right, ratification of the transfer of payroll, and that is next in your packet.
I move to
I do-
approve that.
Yep, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Who, was that, John, was that you?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I heard and I saw. All right, are there any questions about the transfer? Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, that motion passes. Now, for your information, you have 2 pages on the funeral benefits, which are for information, or 1 page, excuse me, on 2 widows. Nellie Russell passed away on August 16th, and Vonda Mays on August 24th. Are there any questions? All right, thank you. Now, Samantha, would you like to work us through the special election report?
Yeah, certainly. So after our July meeting, the board had determined that we were gonna hold a special election to fill the vacant seat. We got nominations. I did actually have 2 nominees decline. Go ahead.
No, I'm just,
Oh. And.
we hate it when that happens,
Yes.
right?
And 2 nominees were ineligible to serve. We received 4 ballots out of the 11 that we mailed, and out of our nomination forms, we received 3 out of 11 back. And once the ballots came in, Ms. Dana Hofmaster was the elected candidate.
Welcome. And congratulations. Very good. That's excellent. So now we have, I believe, we need 1 more council member, and then we'll have a full board. And I'm going to put out again to council to see if I can drum up another council member who's willing to serve. So I'll be emailing the vice mayor and Stacy Maynard to try to, I've asked before, but we'll try it again. Okay, very good. Well, we're really happy you could come.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Do we need to take any action on that? I don't think so.
I don't know that it's required, but you all did do it for the re-elected candidates.
I think
Oh, we did?
It's appropriate that this board accepts the nomination.
Okay.
I believe it by motion.
All right, thank you. Is there a second? Aaron, Commissioner Hensley, excuse me. Seconds. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, that motion passes. We welcome you. Next is our update to proposed ordinances and statute amendment, and that is in your packet. And Michael, is that you?
I believe it is.
I
yes.
believe it is.
My name is Michael Cravens. I'm an attorney in the Department of Law. I'm standing in for Roger Wright, who's on military leave at the moment, and I'm happy to discuss this proposed amendment that he's prepared, consistent with your all's direction. There's 2 amendments in your packet. One is a state statutory amendment to the Kentucky Revised Statutes that's proposed, and it does 2 things. First, it amends to give the mayor appointment power in certain situations where there's a vacancy on the board that's unable to be filled by an election, either regular or special. So it would amend the state statute to authorize the mayor to appoint, subject to the approval of the legislative body, which is the council. So that's the first bolded section in paragraph number 4 on page 10. The next paragraph, the bolded section, addresses, I believe, a request that was made by Councilmember Cloyber regarding residual assets when we liquidate the fund. And what it would do, in 2016, the General Assembly amended this statute to provide that residual assets would be directed to the police and firemen's pension fund. What this would do, but the way that it read in 2016 and the way it reads now is it's a supplemental contribution, which means it doesn't count toward the required contribution that we have to make. This proposed amendment would essentially make it count toward that required contribution. And so those are the two proposed amendments to the state statute related to this board. On page 11, there's a proposed ordinance amendment that addresses also the issue of vacancies on council and election, or on this board and elections. And basically, the first bolded section on page 11 goes through kind of the nomination and election process that the council clerk would follow to fill a vacancy. And then on the next page, the second bolded section at the end addresses what would happen if the state statute is amended as proposed to allow the mayor to appoint vacancies to this board, and how that would work. So I'm happy to answer questions if there are additional questions, but that's generally what the proposed amendments would do.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Let's hear questions, discussion. What's on your mind about this? Councilmember Clover, is this what you expected?
Yes,
Okay.
I think it addresses
Good.
the issue completely.
Yeah.
I think it, grouping it all together is gonna be a very powerful way for us to try and get some change done that'll help us out, so. I like it, thanks for the hard work.
Good, very good. What else?
I'm pleased with it, the language, I think that, perhaps it might not have been the intent of what was back then, but it sure is now, so.
Yes.
And I think there should be credit, where credit is due, so.
It's interesting, we went all the way to 2016 before this change. Do you know the history of that? What's the history of that? Or is it something I shouldn't ask right now?
You might just wanna go
Yeah.
right ahead and not worry about it. But we can't change what happens, so.
I wasn't here, so I just was curious about why it got changed back. But
I think the 2016 change that they made addressing the payment of the residual as a supplemental contribution to police and fire pension fund, that was part of a package of a lot of pension tweaks. That was in the midst of when General Assembly was trying to address all these pension concerns, and I think this was
Yes.
part of many that were basically designed to try to buttress these pension systems, specifically the police and fire pension fund.
Yeah.
So I think they were just trying to find any way they could to make it easier for these pensions to remain funded, basically.
Okay, that makes sense because our task force, I was on that task force in 2014, I believe, where we made the changes, and then this would have followed that, wouldn't it? Okay. Okay, what else? Anything else?
I guess my question, if I may, as far as moving this forward, obviously, I think a motion from this body, but then we would have to have someone over on the state level to, I guess, sponsor,
Yeah.
the bill, and I guess, I don't know.
I think how that would work is we would maybe in concert with, I don't know what your thoughts are, but in concert with our lobbyist, figure out who the best person would be or the best people. We might get 2 or 3 to carry the legislation, because she knows pretty much who might do it and who might not, and who would be stronger to do it. I think this, there's no guarantees, is just all I'll say. But does that make sense? This board would approve it for passing the first part on to the legislature, and then the second part with the ordinance would, well, really the ordinance is tricky because the first part we could do anyway, right? It's about nominations for the board, but the second part is dependent on the KRS amendment. So, Michael, how would you recommend?
Well, I mean, you could pass the ordinance as it's presented, because it says on that second page, in the event the KRS 678 is amended to allow for appointment, here's the process that would occur. If it's not amended, then you just default to the traditional.
I guess I'm wondering about the timing. Timing's a little tricky on that, in a way. What is this? This is November.
So does this ordinance, it doesn't give us a meaningful change until after the KRS amendment, so we're not really on a timeline to get that ordinance passed.
Yeah, for the second part.
For the second part, yeah.
Mhm. Right.
So I guess there's no urgency in order to pass that ordinance, we could wait until we had some clarity on the,
Well, and that's a great point. The first part, which affects elections, really is about a November 1st. So what would be your pleasure? Maybe to wait a little while till we can get somebody to carry the legislation and, see if we can get that through the legislature? I don't think it's too late then to do the ordinance.
No.
What do you think?
I actually, what I would like to know is, since we just shored up our third retiree.
Yes.
When is that next election? It's not on a yearly basis, it's every 2 years?
2 years, so it would be, since this is 21, we just filled our December 20th election seat.
Okay,
So it would be next winter.
okay, so the good thing about that is that fits in with the timeline as
Right.
well.
Yeah.
Although obviously the session is in January and, that is when we would hope to push forward. But I would think that, we need to do some homework about over on the state level and see, because when is our next scheduled meeting of this body?
It is.
Oh, Lord.
And
Okay.
actually, yeah.
Okay, well, we have to make a motion today then.
Well, right, and the issue, I think the issue about the ordinance, the second part, is that we don't want to get too far out in front of the legislative session.
let's not rub anybody the wrong way,
Thank
right?
you.
We'll take it in steps and we'll ask them to present this and then we can follow that
Yes.
lead once they are running with it.
Yes. Does that
Uh-huh.
make sense? Because if we put it out there now, it's ripe for all kinds of things.
And you can always approve the ordinance if the legislature, the General Assembly approves this amendment to the statute. You'll have time in the spring
Oh, sure.
to then move
Mhm.
through the ordinance.
Yes, yes.
But maybe what we could do is go ahead and decide today whether that we support both of these changes.
Mhm.
And obviously we have to, since the next meeting's not till January, we have to do the KRS today.
Right, right.
But we could motion to approve the section 6-49
And bring
with the stipulation that it would be not brought forward to the full council until following the general session.
Yes, that makes
So-
total
Yeah.
sense.
So moved?
So moved.
All
Second.
right, John seconds, Director Maxwell. Any
Proud.
questions on the motion? Now that we've kind of vetted it, any questions, comments? All right, all those in favor of doing just exactly what Councilmember Lamb said, it's a timing thing, and say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, that motion passes, so I will right away work with our lobbyist on who can carry the KRS part and get them lined up. And my hope would be that we can get more than one person maybe, which would strengthen it a lot. And so, okay, very good. Michael, anything else?
No, I think that covers it.
All right, well, thank you very much. Appreciate all the work that Law did on this. And
That's what we're here for.
We'll try to get it moving here. Okay, next is a discussion to increase the benefits to retirees and beneficiaries, and that is, let's see.
We don't have documentation.
Oh, there's no documentation. I guess I read it in the minutes.
sorry, Mayor.
Yes, Commissioner Hensley.
And I apologize for missing the last meeting, but I hear there is a rather robust discussion about the, increasing of the benefits. And the question that was brought forward was about the inclusion of CPI. And so Ms. Combs was kind enough to take a look back at the last several years. And in the last 10 years, that has fallen below 3% all but 1 year. Now 2021 was a little bit higher. And so, moving from the 3% that we have now to a CPI may not be advantageous in the slightest for anyone. However, maybe a combination of the two things, or just increasing to a flat, expected, if we wanna go higher than the 3% current to a different number, may be something that we would want to consider, more. I think one of the benefits of doing that, just increasing it flat across the board all the time, if that is the will of this group, is consistency. CPI, has ranged from less than 1% to, I think we're hearing about 5.5 this year in the last 10 years, and so, that fluctuates quite a bit. So if it's the goal of our group to have a consistent amount that we can consider, as far as an increase, I think that we may want to look at a consistent amount as opposed to using CPI. And that is just my thought, but I'm happy to discuss and to hear what everybody else has to say. Again, I'm sorry, I know there was quite a extensive conversation last time, but we did go back and look at that, and using that as a mechanism works, maybe in addition to a flat percentage, but it also can be very variable.
Mm-hmm. Did you say, Commissioner, that in the last 10 years the CPI has varied from 1.5% to 5%?
In 2021, I think we're looking at like 5.2, 5.4%,
Okay.
somewhere in there. The next highest was in 2011, which was not quite 4%, 3.9%, but then we've had years that are less than 1% also in there, so.
Okay. Let's have a little bit more discussion then, and see
Was-
what your pleasure is, Councilman.
Was that the CPIU or
It
CPIW?
was
Alright.
CPIU.
Okay.
Your thoughts on flat raise versus?
I mean, we could put in there something to the effect of the greater of the two, either the 3% increase or the CPIU number, just so that on those years where there has been that amount of compensation in the CPI, that we capture that, so we're always getting the greater of the two going forward. I don't know, do you have any thoughts on that, Commissioner?
I don't know that this would necessarily set a precedence for our police and fire pension fund.
Oh, boy.
However, that is something that I keep in the
Yes,
back of my
you
mind.
always
This
do,
is super
don't you?
funded, we
I
have a
know.
lot more money.
That is a good point. However, we tend to like to correlate things
Yes.
Okay.
that maybe are not otherwise correlated. So that is my hesitancy there.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, not,
Just on the surface, it seems it would be easier just to set a flat amount.
And more
I
reliable.
You
it is certainly
agree?
administratively
And I think
easier.
it should be an ongoing thing. I mean, this shouldn't have to, you shouldn't have to deal with this year after year after year. If you set up a set amount and that be the same, and it's separate from your cost of living or whatever's given.
Well, I think that's what we're talking about in terms of the cost of living, I think, versus a flat amount.
Right, so the
No.
CPI tries to adjust for the fluctuations in the market, whereas just a flat amount would just be a flat amount. In some years, it's better, and some years it may not be. But in the 10 years that we looked at, the flat amount that we've got currently far exceeded the CPI in most of those years. So I think it has definitely been to the benefit of the retirees, and I think, if we increase that, I think 21 is an anomaly, 2011 seemed to be an anomaly based on the 3% that we've got right now. But again, if we wanted to increase it, since we are fully funded and, we're in a good financial position for the retirees, I don't think that we won't be negatively impacted from doing that. That would just go to the.
What will the CPI be for the next 10 years?
Well,
Let me get my
now,
crystal ball
if she knew that,
And a side note.
she probably wouldn't be working here if she knew
I had
that.
to pull September's
Yes.
CPI, because the way the board meets, it would have to be a CPI that the board could approve in October that would take effect in January. So that's another side effect of actually pulling a CPI. We're having to pull September's for a board approval of October with an effective date of January. So.
Yeah. And it seems if we did a flat number, it would have to be approved each year, correct?
See, that is crazy.
Well, you mean the approval each year is crazy, or the flat amount?
No, there is already in existence.
It is 3% every year. That's a
Yeah.
flat.
And it, currently, right now, it is written in our code of ordinances that they get a 3% every year. And
Right.
it's been that way for
Ever, for
years and years
ever.
and years. I have to say that I would not dicker with that percentage and leave that in place because, obviously, there's been some serious management of this.
Yes.
That's why it's 200% funded.
Yes.
And I don't know that I would feel comfortable with going and dickering with that part of it because I
Okay.
think that that part has been managed so well. But what I would, like to have discussion is to have another supplement.
On top of that.
That way, that's separate from, and everybody continues to get your normal 3% increase on your very minimal retirement pensions as they are, because they are very minimal. And then I would like for us to entertain another supplement.
On top of the 3%?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, that makes
Yes.
total sense.
That's
All
what
right.
I would like to.
Do you have a
entertain.
motion?
Well, that would,
Well, we have to understand what type of supplement that we would choose to do. And I don't know if Ms. Hensley would like to, and I didn't mean to cut you off.
that's all right.
So this is just this was the one from 2014. It was based on years of service, or if you were a beneficiary, and it was a graduated amount based on your years of service. So a beneficiary received a supplement of $200, 0 to 10 years was $200, 10 to 20 years was $300, 20 to 30, $400, and 30 to 40, $500. So this is just an example of what has been done in the past.
Okay.
And our numbers are so little now, I mean, our number.
do we have?
I mean, our
I was
number-
prepared. We have a total of 38 retirees. 27 are widows. 11 are actual retirees. Average age is probably 80s, mid-80s, is the average age. So that's how many we have left as of this morning.
Okay.
You can also,
Do you have the years of service? I mean,
um,
I'm just curious what the lowest is and what the top is.
I don't,
Okay, that's all right.
but I can get that. I
Councilmember-
have the dates and stuff, so I can run
Yes,
a
ma'am.
query and figure that out for you.
Councilmember, I'm sorry.
No,
ahead and
go ahead.
finish. Councilmember Kloiber's been trying to say something.
No, and again, I think that us having, especially because we are so well funded, talking about another supplemental pay is a good idea. I think the only reason the CPI came up at the last conversation was because of increased fears about inflation going forward affecting how much that 3% would actually be worth. And so in those years that you picked, and you showed this year and 2011, one of the driving factors for those increases was the inflation. So With those fears mounting, that was the only reason to bring it up, but if we're going to just manually take care of that by saying we're gonna do a supplemental thing, it just will require more diligence on our part to make sure that we are there looking at it, and so maybe in our discussions about that supplemental pay, as just an exhibit to look off of, we will bring in the CPI to see kind of how far behind we are on that and add it to any of those baseline supplemental pays, just to make sure we're keeping things at that level. Does that at least make sense, I
It
guess?
does.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes,
Are these,
Councilmember
are the
Baxter.
supplemental rates, are they set in stone? Could we increase them? I mean, that seems kind of
That's just a
fiddly.
one time, right?
That was
This was an
just-
ordinance that was created in 14, and these were the amounts that were given at that period of time. And it's just an example.
Okay.
So we would, I guess, propose and vote on
Anew.
the same type thing and then have an ordinance drawn.
So I guess that today, if that's something we wanted to do, we would make a motion to set on the agenda for July or sometime in the middle of the year, that we would be bringing up this supplemental pay, and that then we would, be looking to do that adjustment for the next year. And we could either make that recurring or not, but placing it on the agenda is probably gonna be the best place for us, cause then we have a definitive time where we can have the information and make that decision. That make sense?
We could do it in January too.
Councilmember Baxter.
Is this a supplement that is received every year, or we have to vote?
Just-
Every single time you do it, it's a one time.
It's an ordinance each time,
Okay.
yeah.
And it's easier for us to implement a supplement pay January 1, honestly. That way we're hitting everybody throughout the whole year with the supplemental and or the raise increase.
Well, I think anything we did would take effect on January 1. I was just trying to hope that for if we were doing on a trailing year or on a leading year, that we had some information about the year in order to try and make those adjustments for what the markets look like and how far everyone's dollar was going to take them. I know that might be too far in the weeds, but I'm just saying that whether or not the ordinance goes into effect on January 1, as in, do we think that right now the 3% is not enough and we need a supplemental pay starting now? If that's the case, then we probably need to get something out there right now. If we're looking at next year, we want to look at
Yeah.
supplemental pay, we would probably wanna pick a time in the middle of the year, so we have enough time to look at it, see how the year's working, and then get it in place before that January 1.
And it seems from the discussion, there is more information some people would like to see. So this is November. It's a little, our time is short to do something by this January 1st, unless you want to do something based on the last ordinance and then get all the information for the next time. It's up to the board. Yes.
What, I just did the numbers and we're less than $10,000.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's nothing.
I would like to hear from the retirees. I mean, I think you all might have been involved when we were talking about this. Dana, you were here, weren't you, when we talked about this supplement the last time? Charlene, you might not have been. But what is your all's thoughts on providing a supplement? Just a, one-time supplement check for the retirees.
Anybody opposed?
Well, are you saying that any supplements you give, no matter what you call it, is gonna have to be done every year?
It would be year by year. This board would determine each year whether it wanted to do that. To give the beneficiaries a supplement, a one-time supplement each year.
Are you saying you're planning to do that? Is that what you're wanting to make an ordinance for?
That's-
Is that you definitely will do that once a year?
That-
Or you're just gonna think about it once a year?
So each time you do it, you have to make a new ordinance. So if we wanna do it just this year, we make an ordinance. If we wanna do it next year, we make an ordinance.
A new
And
one.
we on the board would be talking about whether we wanted to do it or not each year, and you have to make a new ordinance each time you do it. And it sounds like from Commissioner Hensley, the last time we did this was 2014?
That's just the example I pulled. Is that the last one?
I thought,
It was later.
what, I thought we did
We did
one,
another one after that.
we
Okay.
did
And I thought
one,
it was
yeah.
more, but I don't have it with me.
Okay.
I could run to my office and get it, I'm sure.
We did one in 2019, maybe?
That's what I was thinking.
Mhm.
And seeing a supplement is just a one-time thing,
Mhm.
whereas it's not gonna affect your monthly annuity
Right.
every month. It's just a
It would-
one-time supplement.
It would add money to you. I mean, just to put it in blunt terms, it would be an extra supplement.
Well, I personally think it should be a flat rate. I think you're gonna help people more than some of these that really don't draw much of anything. If they got, and I'll just use this as a figure, say $1,000, and you don't want to affect the cost of living, just a standalone situation for it. And if you have to do it every year, then you have to do it every year.
And I think that every year is kind of a technicality, really, that just would have to be done legally for this board to have the discussion, and then the council has to adopt it. The council members have to adopt it. So, I mean, from my perspective, the thinking is this year might be different than one that would be done 5 years from now, and that's the importance of voting every year, is, if that makes sense, to see where the economy is and where the pension funds are and that kind of thing. But in a way, it's just a technicality. If the board supports giving an annual supplement.
I mean, when we did this back in the last time, whether it's 2019 or, you know, we had to take it to our then colleagues and to ask for their support.
Yes.
Now, they supported it fully, but there was a little bit of a learning curve because this is something that has not happened frequently, mind you, as you all well know, because you're the recipients of what hasn't happened and what has happened, so. But my theory is that with the number of beneficiaries and retirees and the healthiness of this fund, that those that have managed these funds over all of these years should be able to have a supplement, stipend, whatever you want to call it, based on the fact that they have managed it so well, and it doesn't all have to just come back into whatever. It doesn't have to go back to the way that, you know, and
Well, I mean,
so, because it doesn't go back to the general fund. So.
No.
I feel like those that are in the fund should be the ones
Yes.
receiving the funds.
Yes, ma'am.
Benefit,
is that-
Yes,
benefiting.
ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So it
Yes.
sounds to me like we have two things we're discussing right now. One is moving forward when we want to discuss these kind of supplemental pays, and the other one is, do we want to authorize and try to get out an ordinance for supplemental pay today? And it sounds like there's some appetite. I know that one number was thrown out at $1,000. Does anyone else have any other ideas on that? Because I'd be in support of doing that. I think we have just enough
Generous.
time to, if we get that out today, we could move this along before the winter break.
Yes, go
My
ahead.
question is, I understand you need to make an ordinance or have an ordinance that would allow you to do this. But I don't know why you would need another ordinance to do I don't know why you would have to do that ordinance every year. All you would have to do is the amount every year, but you wouldn't have to change the ordinance. The ordinance would be in effect. I mean, ordinances are made every day that do not change every year or are addressed every year. I can understand addressing the amount, but not the fact that you're gonna do this.
Well,
That's the
I'm
part I
not,
don't understand.
I'm not a legal, I know just enough to be dangerous, but if we're going to, I mean, I think what I hear you saying is, could we do an ordinance that says every year we will give a supplement?
We will do something, yes.
And then every year we would still have to go back and do another ordinance stating an amount. The council has to approve that.
Okay, I understand that.
Yeah.
But at leaving it like it was initially stated, they could just decide not to do an ordinance that year.
That's true.
That's true.
So,
And in the scenario where we have to come back and decide the amount, they could decide to do 0 as that amount.
Yes.
well, that's true, but, I mean, even if they only got $5,
Mm-hmm.
there would be a law saying they get something every year.
Can we
That's
set a
what I'm getting
Can we
at.
set a minimum?
Not to change it.
So it's just, there's just any time that money is going out of the government or going to a specific place, we have to make an ordinance that says that, no matter what amount it is. So if we wanna give $5 to someone, we have to make a new ordinance. If we wanna give $1,000 to someone, we have to make a new ordinance. That's just a very technical thing. This isn't like an ordinance like we make sure that there are enough bike racks on the street, and no matter how big the streets are, there's enough bike racks. This is an ordinance that doesn't persist, it's a one-time money ordinance. And that's just a specific way the government has to give funds to something.
I understand that you have to do the money amount every year, but you don't have to do the ordinance to say that you will do something every year.
Well, my only, and I understand what you're saying, that would lock in the giving some sort of a supplement. Or, as Councilmember
Well, there's
Glaber
one
said,
on
it
there
could
now
say
that
0.
we get 3%.
Let me-
Do that ordinance every year?
Yeah, well,
No, it's in in section 6-49, but that's a cost of living
Yeah.
increase, and
Well,
that's handled differently than supplement
yes.
pay. Supplement pay is something that is not typically, it is not a yearly,
Yes,
action.
yes.
Typically, supplement only comes,
When
if we're
out of
lucky,
goodness of somebody's heart.
if we're lucky, and we can afford it, it comes a few times in our lifetime.
Yes.
But I think that because of the healthiness of this pension
Today,
fund today,
today,
which I really don't foresee with 38 members left, that it's gonna ever go below 200%. But I think this board is trying to make sure it recognizes the, oh, there they are. Recognizes that the good management, and so, and I didn't.
yes, and you're absolutely right. Supplements are, I believe, normally, I'm looking at Aaron and some others, normally done on an as-needed basis. And heaven forbid, and I'm an optimist, that our economy had a total collapse someday, this pension fund would collapse too. It's not going to happen, right? But-
I can actually, if I may,
You can speak to that?
So-
Get your 8-ball out.
as far as the actuarial valuation is
Yes.
concerned, the liability defeasing portion that's in fixed income, that defeats the entire liability. So the market risk is almost entirely taken away because those bonds mature along with the schedule.
Yes,
The return seeking portfolio, the large one, that's all surplus. So if we went all cash, there would still be more than enough money. So I think of it that way in terms of the benefit payments are
Yeah.
almost guaranteed to be risk-free due to the liability defeasing section. And the return seeking portfolio is basically a lot of extra money, it's a surplus, and that's the bulk of the assets.
okay, good,
But
thank
if the
you.
federal government defaulted on all of their bonds,
Oh, well, that's a whole different story, right?
we're in a much bigger trouble than just if we're out one of these pension funds,
Yes, Susan,
so almost no risk, so.
Yeah.
yes, and that's a good thing, right?
I
Thank
do
you.
have the ordinance that we did in 2019, that's what I had her bring in for me. We did a 4% on the base amount of the pension benefit. So it was a consistent 4%, so their annuities actually went up as opposed to a supplement.
That's right. I forgot about
So that's what we did in 2019.
Okay.
So they instead of a one-time supplement, they saw it monthly on their annuity.
Okay.
I forgot, yeah, yeah. Cause
I
I
told her to
remember,
bring it.
I remember this
This
one,
one.
but,
I remember that one because that
Uh-huh.
was a nightmare.
it was a
I'm sorry, it
nightmare.
was a nightmare.
Administratively, this is a lot more challenging.
Yes,
It was.
yes.
But 19, we just did a 4%
I bumped up.
increase on their monthly, and then they got
Ah.
their 3% on top of that whenever they were due their COLAs.
Okay, and that does sound easier.
Well, that way they're seeing it monthly on
Yes,
their annuity
it's a-
check as opposed to
yes.
just one lump sum.
Mhm.
So that's another
And
option
that-
y'all can think about.
And that 4% wasn't tied to anything?
No, it was not. I
Okay.
think they looked at different options to make
Mhm.
sure it was actuarially,
Mhm.
not gonna hurt the fund, in a
And
sense.
do you know in 19 how much money that was? Does your report say that?
No.
Just out of curiosity, I mean, it can't be
Well, I have a
very
copy of the
much.
ordinance
It can't be
that I
very
have,
much.
so.
It wasn't much, I
No.
mean, you know, bless their hearts.
So we have that option,
Yeah,
which,
which they would see it every month as opposed to just
yes.
in
So
January.
what do you all think
I
about
like
that
better.
idea?
That's up to you all.
Yeah.
As opposed to a supplement, it would be an increase, percentage increase in your monthly
You'd
payment.
rather get a lump sum or on every check.
Mhm.
It would-
Well, I'm fine with either way.
You're fine with either
But
way?
the majority of people probably, if they get X amount this month, they want X amount next month.
So the monthly,
You know,
Mhm.
the percentage thing makes more sense to more people.
and
I
it would
think.
go each month, you
Right,
would get
so
it
they
each
know what they're
month.
getting each month.
This was expected,
An expected amount of money.
I like that idea.
Well, and we won't have to recreate the wheel. We've
That's
already done it
right.
once before,
That's
so we could
exactly
easily do it
right.
again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other I mean, that makes total sense.
Well, that way, cause if you do $1,000 supplement, your taxes are gonna eat into it.
Yes.
Well, and then don't you also, and I don't know if this affects the retirees and beneficiaries, but also you have to make sure that you're not getting something that is going to impair or hinder anything else that you receive, from, and there's.
Medicare and all those minimum other stuff.
There's
Yeah.
certain amounts that you, like, I don't know, Social Security, or they don't get Social Security, so that doesn't even affect them, so. So maybe my thought is moot, but.
Just from my own, just because I like to do math, do we know what a monthly check, like what an average might be, so we can know what this 4% increase is going to look like compared to, say, $1,000?
Get ready, it's gonna blow your socks off.
Oh, yeah,
I
right.
don't have the average,
Oh, darn.
no, I do have, I do have how many people are that are making less than $12.50 a month.
Hmm.
Which, that could be
How-
another option, is bringing some of those people up, cause I have some individuals that have a retiree making $565. I
And
have
was
a widow making $485 a
And
month.
was that based on time and service? That had some kind of
Yes.
Probably.
qualifications?
Yeah.
Yes.
I know with the police and fire, we have a minimum. So if
Yes.
you're not for like poverty level, so if you're not making, if your calculation was less than $12.50, we brought you up to $12.50.
Mhm.
So,
Right?
Colleen?
So just.
May I ask, so if I took the disbursements that were made,
Well, that's a good point.
looked at the disbursements that were made.
Yes.
now that would help.
So I'm looking at the liability diffusing portfolio on page 3. I don't know if this is accurate, but the disbursements over the trailing 12 months is 1.1 million.
For 12 months?
It seems like that's the case. If the money that was taken out of the liability diffusing portfolio, we assume that that was in benefit payment. And let's say there were 40 beneficiaries,
38?
38. Seems higher than what I expected.
Yeah, I don't know, 1,150.
Maybe is there more money?
I think
If that
that-
disbursement include other things?
Doesn't it pay for?
Doesn't it pay some health,
Insurance?
It probably has to
some
say something.
fringe
Yeah.
things, Susan?
Yeah.
It seems
I
high.
would
That's
think it,
exciting.
yeah, because some do have insurance. And I could probably.
I thought,
Well, even just hearing that some people are making 550 or 560 or below that 1,200 number, on a yearly basis at a 4%, that's like $250, $300, as opposed to what we were previously talking about at possibly 1,000. And so, I mean, again, we can figure out those numbers however we want. Here's my other question about that 4% increase. Was that a 4% base increase that then continued year over year, or was it only just for that 1 year was a 4% increase?
They got a 4% on their annuity, so then their annuity, that's what their new annuity was.
The base,
So
yeah.
the base
the base
changed
went
Okay.
up,
from that point forward.
Okay.
which is
Yeah.
actually a good thing.
It wasn't just a 4% increase kind of thing, it was based on.
So at
the-
least then they're getting that.
Yeah, so in a sense, they'll get 7% for the year, once they
Yes.
got their 3% on top of that, which would have been their COLA.
Okay.
So, which
Yeah.
is a, I mean,
That
I mean,
changes
it's a
it
good
somewhat.
thing, I think, when the base can go up like that.
yes, instead of a one-time
It-
thing, yes.
Mhm.
Is that a good thing? You like that idea?
I mean, the one thing that we could do is, if there's a sentiment for this today, is vote to do something starting in January. And then study this a little bit more in depth with the numbers and everything come July, so that we're prepared for a decision that we've had time for the next January. Because I think it would be good to be able to do something January 1st.
I would too. Yeah.
And it may not be perfect, but it could be good. You know,
So January 1, they will get the 3% COLA, is that when that takes effect?
Their COLA goes into effect the month that they retired, so
Oh, okay,
depending
okay.
on what month it's in, I mean, it's spread out throughout the whole year, depending on the
But then
individual.
if we did the base, the annuity
The
rate.
4% base would go into effect January for everybody. So I would do the 4% base, and then anybody that got a COLA that month, and they would get a 3% on top of that.
Mhm.
And then throughout the year, whenever it hit, they would get a 3% raise
Yeah.
Well,
then.
that would protect everybody for the whole year.
Yes.
Yes, it would.
Everybody would be on a level playing field.
Yes.
So what can we do now at this
Can I
point?
see your draft ordinance, your ordinance that you, I'm gonna make a motion.
That I have somewhere.
And I
Give me
will
a sec.
second it.
So then I will second.
I'll give it all to you guys. How much do you want?
That's what I wanna do, but.
Well, now wait, we want them to get it each year.
I know.
So they can have some money.
I'm looking at her, 26.
I mean, I do
divided by
too.
38.
I'd rather they
Okay.
get it than.
All right, so I'm gonna take my mask down while, so everybody can hear me, okay? Everybody hear me? All right, I move to create a subsection 6-53B5 of the Code of Ordinances relating to pensions other than police and firemen, specifically pensions on retirement, to provide for an increase of 4% to each retiree's annuity or the annuity paid to the retiree's widow or dependent children. So move.
Second,
Effective January 1,
Thank you.
2022.
second.
Okay, any discussion? Any discussion? I think we've already vetted it pretty thoroughly. All those in favor, please say aye. Anyone opposed? All right, thank you for that. Now, do you want to, just so it's for the record, have a motion to, in July, or in the summer,
Summer,
whenever
yeah.
that meeting is, to start and get the information we need to do the next year? Or do you want to just kind of by consensus agree that's what we're going to do?
Make sure
Yeah.
that you have it on the agenda.
Let's just
July.
have it
That's
on
right.
the
Yeah, let's put it on
agenda,
the agenda for-
End of July.
End of July.
I'm sorry.
July 26th, all right.
So everybody's pretty much in agreement to do that.
Alright, on the July
And then we'll be prepared for the next January 1st. Very good, nice work. Okay, anything else on that?
The only thing is that, we'll need to make sure that we get the.
They'll get the motion. Yeah, I
Motion
mean,
to you to draft,
Yeah.
okay.
and when, what do you suppose the timeline, council goes on break when, December 8th? Is your last meeting? So we'll need it on the docket so it can get 2 readings by then. Just if you can carry that back to,
Is that today?
We
is
could do
Roger
this-
out for a
we could do
while?
the ninth or the second, that would give us.
For a while.
We have a Thursday and a Tuesday.
Okay, so they'll figure that out.
Good.
If we can just get council to approve it by the 8th of December, second reading by the 8th.
Before break.
So we need to,
So
Okay,
they'll
today.
figure out the timeline on that.
I mean, the typical process
They-
for
Oh,
this is that a motion is made here, and then the council clerk's office works with the law department to
They'll blue
prepare
sheet
the
it.
ordinance, and then it is
Yes.
brought forward in the normal blue sheet process, or whatever they call
Yes.
that now, legislative process.
Yeah.
And then it comes to us on work session agenda, and then it would go, then progress to the council meeting first and second
Yes.
reading, so.
And it'll follow that same process. And council's out the week of Thanksgiving, I believe.
Yeah.
And so it'll just be timing. You all know, you've done this before.
Yeah, I'm just
So-
not sure off the top of my head, the blue sheet calendar in terms of when things have to be
Samantha can,
submitted.
Yeah, I can work with
She
you.
can work
I don't
with
have
you.
it exactly, but I would believe that we've got one more meeting before Thanksgiving, so it's probably gonna be the week before, the Monday
Yeah.
before, but I'll get with you after this.
Yeah, the ordinance is no problem. I
Okay.
can prepare that
good.
today, it's not an
You
issue,
can
so.
copy it right off of the one Councilmember Lamb
Do you need a copy of this one?
No, I've got it.
Yeah,
All
that's what I
right,
thought.
very good. Thank you all so much. We'll look for that on new business. Okay, now, who is giving our, number 8 is approval of the consent of the advisory agreements, which Chad, I think, drew those up.
I think, PFM,
Yeah.
that's you guys. This was what, was brought up at the last meeting, and Roger had suggested that the board review this and make a
Okay.
formal approval before it's signed.
Okay, all right. So that is on page 13, correct, of your packets? And it's basically, in lay terms, it's agreeing to work with you again. I think isn't that basically what it is?
It's more of a negative consent. So there was, I think, a 60-day period where it basically continues business as usual. You don't physically have to sign it.
Okay.
The reason why we did it is because our asset management business, the firm, was acquired by US Bank, and it hasn't closed yet. It closes December 7th, I believe.
Okay,
So this is just to let you know that the ownership of the firm has changed. But our existing contract remains in place.
okay,
That's kind of my layman understanding of
Okay.
what it means. So, signing it would be nice. If you don't sign it, basically, it just means business as usual. Our contract that's already in place is sort of, nothing changed with respect to the terms of that.
Does this board then need to approve it in order to have it signed? It seems it would be, from what you said, it would be good to have it signed.
I'll
well,
leave that up to you.
can I ask a couple questions
Yeah,
before
of
we get
course.
to signing things?
Yeah, we're just kind of vetting through this, what
Okay.
it means.
What is the, what's the current term on the contract that we have? Obviously, this is a change of control, so that's why you're asking us if we wanna stay.
Yes.
But like, what is the current term? Does it have a term, or is it at will? Like, what is it at right now?
Forgive me, I don't have the response to that. I believe it's, you can fire us on 30 or 60-day notices.
I think it's 30 days.
30 days, so you're not
Okay.
bound
Mhm.
you can decide to fire us at 30 noise.
Well, I'm
So
not trying
really-
to turn this conversation into.
Well, that's
a conversation.
putting it in later.
Yeah, there's no, you're not bound to any specific term,
Mhm.
it's a month-to-month contract.
And so this is just a consent to agree to the previous terms of the contract, even though there's been a change in control.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? No? Do we need to vote on this then?
I don't know if one's, Roger wanted the board to approve it, so I don't
Then
know.
we'll vote on it. If Roger wanted that, then I think we should probably do it.
Right.
It's probably best, that way
Yeah.
we can, everybody can agree and then we can get it signed.
Yes, okay, so let's have a motion and a second and then we'll further discuss.
I'll move to approve
Okay,
or to
thank you.
accept.
Okay, is
I'll
there?
second.
Okay, Commissioner, seconds. Now, other discussion, questions? No? No? Okay.
They've done a good job, so.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Anyone opposed? All right, that motion passes.
Thank you.
And Khalid, I think you're on for number 9, the
Okay.
investment review for the previous quarter.
First of all, good morning, it's really nice to see you all.
Yes.
I apologize about the reports not arriving yesterday. They were FedEx to arrive yesterday morning, and so I was late today because I was trying to run to the FedEx place to see if I can catch them, but.
I think
They're-
nothing arrives on time these days. I heard yesterday if you don't get your boxes in the mail in about a week or two, they won't get there for the
Wow,
holidays.
for the holidays.
Yeah, that's the way we live now.
Okay.
But thank you, Susan, for printing them out.
Not a problem.
I'll
I
be
think we
brief.
fixed the problem, so.
You fixed it,
Yeah.
good.
So I'll just do a quick 5 or 10 minute recap, just to be respectful of your time. I know you have a lot on your agenda. So the first couple of pages, there's a summary of the portfolio performance on the first page, once you flip into the packet. There's 2 portfolios. There's a return-seeking portfolio, which has all the surplus funds. Once we've taken all the liability, the projected benefit payments that the actuary estimates will be made over the lifetime of the fund, those are defeased into fixed income securities, high-quality investment-grade treasuries and corporates, and that's in the liability defeasing portfolio. So as you can see, the performance for the quarter, the liability defeasing returned 0.14%. There's the disbursements and the change in market value. The return-seeking portfolio on the left side had a negative return for the quarter. September was a rough month for the markets, but outperforming the benchmark. So even though we lost 0.16% for the quarter, it was much better than the benchmark, which lost almost 0.6%. Now, the next page, page 2, gives an overall snapshot of both portfolios and the asset allocation of both portfolios. So you can see there's roughly 26.8 million in the return-seeking portfolio, which has the surplus money. There's 9.98 million in the liability defeasing portfolio. So the 9.98 million is basically what you would estimate is needed to make sure all the benefit payments are made on time over the lifetime of the plan based on the actuarial valuation. So in total, there's 36.7 million, and you kind of see how the money is divided between the asset classes there. The next page, page 3, gives you a summary of the last 12 months for the last full year of returns. So that looks a lot better. So the return-seeking portfolio for the last 12 months ending September 30th returned 19.55%. The benchmark for the 60-40, or 60% equities, 40% bonds, returned 16.5%. So 3% outperformance versus the benchmark. Really happy about that. On the right-hand side, you can see the disbursements. I don't know exactly what goes into that, but I'm sure some of it's benefit payments, some of it are other expenses, I'm sure that are related to the administration of the plans. So the liability defeasing portfolio had a negative return of 2.1% for the 12-month period. Obviously, the bond market, with rates where they are, bonds didn't do so well over the last 12 months. The good thing about these bonds is you can hold them to maturity. I'll do a quick market recap. I won't go into details, but obviously the market and the economy to some extent are really driven by COVID. We saw a third wave. We had a third wave of rises due to the Delta. And obviously, when we see an increase or a spike in the number of COVID cases, there's more uncertainty and the economy doesn't do so well. But as you can see, cases have been coming down significantly as of late. So that third wave has ended. And this is natural in any pandemic. You have these waves. Consumer sentiment kind of went down a little bit recently, but it's still in positive territory. The TSA checkpoints really kind of give you an indication of travel activity is almost back to normal, to where it was. On page 6, just gives you a snapshot of economic growth. GDP has been increasing significantly over the last few quarters, really catching up from 2020 when we had a negative decline. But it will flatten out and moderate down to towards a 2.5% rate eventually. The next page, PMI. It's a measure of the purchasing managers. It's a leading indicator that gives you an idea, is the economy expanding or contracting? And anything above 50 here indicates an expanding economy. That's a good thing. Economy continues to grow based on the PMI numbers. Consumer prices, as you can see, almost 5.5% for the CPI as of September. So there's a spike in inflation. Inflation, the Fed thinks it's transitory, meaning it's going to be short term. I think that it will be somewhat transitory, but it's going to take longer than some people expect, because the shelter or the housing component of inflation hasn't been fully factored in yet. And if you're familiar with the rental market or the real estate market, you've seen values go up and rents go up significantly, more than 2 or 3 or 4%. So we might see that CPI number, that inflation number, remain high for just a little bit longer until we work through all the aftermath of the pandemic. There's this supply chain, a lot of products are not getting to their destination. There's a lot of disruption in the supply chain. That has something to do with it. But eventually we should see a more normal inflation. It's just going to take a little bit longer than maybe most people expect. So we might see inflation a little bit elevated for a little while longer, but it should normalize once we've worked through all these issues. Really, the Fed is potentially about to begin tapering or stop the purchasing of securities, and eventually will begin to raise rates. We expect that not for another, rates may not go up meaningfully, and if they do, they will be gradually going up. Potentially, if you look at the dot plot on page 10, this is a survey of the Federal Reserve members, and really the dot plot, takes their sort of survey in terms of where they think rates will be. So they're not looking to begin raising rates until 2022, and based on the survey, it's going to be sort of a slow and gradual process. Interest rates are still going to be very low compared to where they historically have been for decades. So even if they do rise, we're still going to see low interest rates, generally speaking, compared to historically. So I'll dive into the very quick snapshot of the return-seeking portfolio. Just a couple of pages I want to point you to. Let's go straight to the plan performance summary on page. It says 2.1 on the lower left side, and it kind of looks really busy like this. This shows you, if you wanted to see how the portfolio is invested, all the different mutual funds and sub-advisors used in those mutual funds. The total fund returned negative 1.6% for the quarter, beating the benchmark return of negative 0.59. Going back a year, return of 19.55%, 3% better than the benchmark. And then going back, 5 years, if you wanted to go out longer, its annualized rate of return is 10.67%, and the benchmark return is 9.89%. So the portfolio obviously has benefited from the strong momentum in the markets, but also there's been significant outperformance relative to the benchmarks, which I'm happy to see that, and that's net of the underlying manager fees, but it's not net of the PFM advisory fees. So if you look at this performance, that takes out the product fees, all these manager fees that must be paid. They're netted out of these returns. Another page I think would be important to look at from a governance perspective is, are you in line with your asset allocation for the investment policy? That's on page 2.7, on the lower left-hand side, page 2.7. You can see the investment policy that the board has in place provides a comfortable leeway for the investment managers. The target is 60% equities, 40% fixed income. Although we're well within those comfortable ranges, I will say we're about 11% underweight in fixed income. Bonds are not paying much right now, so net of inflation, you saw the inflation number, and you're not really getting rewarded to be a bond holder right now, no matter what maturity, because you're actually losing money to inflation if you're in bonds. So given that we're in an economic recovery, and yes, there is some uncertainty, and stocks are expensive, but every asset class is expensive right now. Fixed income is expensive, cash is expensive because you're guaranteed to lose money to inflation. Stocks are still the better place to be for a long-term plan like this. Stocks are still better. There's so much cash on the sidelines. The economy is recovering. Yes, there's uncertainty, but we decided we're going to underweight fixed income by 11%. And we've taken that money and essentially added commodities, preferred securities, as well as convertible securities. They provide a little bit more upside, a little bit more yield than traditional fixed income. So that's where the portfolio is at right now. And finally, I'm very excited about the next two slides. I'm going to call them the Council Member Kloiber exhibit. He asked an excellent question last time, and typically we have fees displayed in our reporting. I don't know why we didn't have them before, but page 2.9 is a summary of all the mutual fund fees. The expense ratios, 52 basis point or 0.52% is what it costs. Those are netted out of the returns. So the outperformance that you saw is net of these fees. Now, on page 14, I've summarized, we've done this to sort of summarize all the components of different fees and expenses that go into the management. The first line item is PFM's fee. That's what we get paid to be your investment advisor and to do the reporting and come in and manage the money. Line number 2 is the estimated custody fee. So there's an independent custodian. It happens to be U.S. Bank, and I know we're getting acquired by U.S. Bank, but the custody and trust business of the bank is separate from the investment business. And that's an independent relationship that you have. You can always choose a different custodian if you feel. But they do a really good job, and their fees are really low. So it's about 2 basis points all in for the custody. Investment manager fees, which we show on the previous slide, there's an actual fee credit. So PFM created those mutual funds to aggregate and create economies of scale. Any profit that we potentially make from the mutual funds, we rebate back because we don't want to be double paid. We're getting an advisory fee and that's all we get. And so we credit back any profits from the mutual funds back to your invoice. And so you should see those on the invoices that we sent you. So all in, the out-of-pocket fee amount is about 21 basis points, and the amount netted from the returns are about 38 basis points. So that gives you an idea of the all-inclusive expenses associated with management of the fund. I think that's an important slide to also note. Other than that, the rest of the portfolio shows you, the rest of the presentation shows you the liability diffusing portfolio, which is made up of the bonds that are held to maturity, typically used to make the benefit payments. So, I think the portfolio is in a good position. All the benefit payments that are projected to be made should be covered by the liability diffusing portfolio. And the return-seeking portfolio really accounts for the surplus funds, if you will. So if you were to make any one-time, supplemental payments, I would probably take them out of the return-seeking portfolio. Any questions?
You ready for questions? Questions?
Always such a good report to hear. can be a crappy week, but when we hear this, it's always is a good thing.
Thanks to the markets, the portfolio just continues to grow, and we know that the benefit payments are taken care of through the LDI portfolio. So it's really, you guys have done a fantastic job as a board, and obviously it's been very well managed, and so thank you for the vote today to continue working with us.
Other comments or questions?
I'm very happy to hear that we are underweight on our fixed income in our investment return seeking portfolio, so, alright, good, thanks.
Well, if Councilmember Kloiber's happy, we're happy, right? Motion to adjourn. No. What other questions or comments do you have for Khalid? Nothing? Now, we thank you so much. I'm trying to remember, some people in this room have not met you in person, right? Because we were on Zoom
Yes.
for a while.
I did. I came in the last.
Oh, I know
meeting.
that,
You
but,
weren't here.
I know that, but some people, yeah. So, anyway, it's good to have you back.
Thank you, it's good to be
Yes,
back.
yes, and thank you for the report.
My pleasure.
So, with that, let's look at our meeting schedule for 22. And just for information only, I will be out January 25th. So, we'll probably have a quorum anyway. If you can, do you usually confirm the quorum? You do, don't you?
Yes.
And Councilmember Lamb, if you can chair, that would be really good.
God willing, the creek don't rise.
That's right, and that we have a quorum. So, other dates look good with everybody?
How many meetings do we have to have in a year? Just
4.
Okay.
And so you see, 21 got a little confusing because we had trouble getting a quorum a few times. And that's why it looks like such a long list of meetings, which it really was, wasn't it? But those 4 for 22 are what's scheduled right now. So if we find that, as we get closer to the end of January, that we're not going to have a quorum, I know Samantha always looks for another date. So.
You have to think about the weather.
I
in
know, I was just
January
thinking of that.
For traveling,
Ice and snow.
and so,
Yep. So anything else for the good of the board? No? Well, again, welcome. We're happy to get closer to a full board, and I'm gonna start pounding on the council again.
yeah.
Normally what I do is email the vice mayor and Stacy to go ahead and look for another council member. You all can tell them how wonderful the experience is. All right, with that, could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Thank you very much. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Of course not. We are adjourned. Thank you for your time. Thank you again, Khalid.